Bells are kind of my thing. Thank you for tuning in. So that signals that we're going to get into this now. And you know what else it means as well if you're a long time viewer. Okay, so in today's live stream video, I want to go into the real magic which we can find and the wisdom that we can find within fantasy books. So I've got some of my favorite books here. So there's like the Earthsea Quartet, there is Lord of the Rings, A Discovery of Witches. So there's a lot of my favorite books here, and I've especially chosen these ones because I believe they have important messages to teach us about real magic, and we can get stuff from that. 10, 10 favorite books which I'm going to talk about especially, and there is 5 extras, so there's 15 books here in total that I want to say some words about. So I don't want to make this too long a video, but I do have some points just to keep me on track. Okay, so book number 1. So another thing to bear in mind is that all of these books are part of a series. The majority of these books all come in a series as well. So rather than just saying I like book 1, book 2, book 3, etc., 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 like all of the sequel, I've picked the first 1 or 2 books of the series so that I can show you. Okay, so the first book I want to talk about is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. So I think this is an important thing. What I really like about this and how I think it connects to an important message in real magic. Yeah, there is some themes of overcoming oppression in there, but what I find very magical and what I think we can use and take from it is that in the Mistborn series, they have something that they call allomancy. So they use they get their special powers from using metals, and the metals they use kind of it's not so much as alchemy, but it's kind of like if you think of what you use a crystal for, what modern day new age and spiritual and witches, what we use crystals for, we grab a crystal and then we have the metaphysical properties of that crystal. So in the Mistborn series, the we they these allomancers, they use the metals to work magic in different ways. So I've got some notes here, so I will read you some of the notes which I have. So this is from Wiki, the Mistborn Wiki. So I think it was Copper Mines Wiki or something along those lines. So it says allomancy is one of the 3 metallic arts on Scadrial. So that is like the planet where these books are set. The Brandon Sanderson Mistborn books are set in Scadrial. Okay. So at the time of the events of the Mistborn, the first book is The Final Empire. So this book here, I've got the Well of Ascension. Let me know if any of you've heard of this or if you've read it and what you think about it. I'd love to know what you all think about that. So I don't have the first book to show you, as I borrowed the first book when I was reading these. I borrowed the first one from the library, and then I liked the first one so much that I bought the second, third, and I believe it's the second and third one. I'm not sure if I have a fourth one or not. But the one that I have here is the Well of Ascension. But if you want to start from the beginning, the first one, what was the first one called again? Let me look. Let's see what I can find. Does it say in here? Oh gosh, I hate when books don't do that. It doesn't look like it does say what the first one is. Yeah. So it only says goes on about book 3. So book 3 is Hero of the Ages. So yeah, I've completely forgotten what the... Oh, yeah, I remember now. The first one was called The Final Empire. So it actually said it in my notes, The Final Empire. So that's the first book. And the second book, Well of Ascension. So what I'm trying to get at is that if you look at myself, I like to wear copper. So the real magic that we can get from this, it's teaching us the importance of tuning into the magical frequencies of metals. We can different metals are good for different things. So if you look at copper is a very healing, and it amplifies and conducts energy as well. So that is why I like copper. And copper's not as expensive as some of the other metals like silver and gold and platinum. Although each of the metals, they're useful in their own way. So if you look at gold, gold taps you directly into the yang sort of energy. So like if you think of the divine masculine, if you gold taps you into that frequency. Okay. So the message that I was getting at from that is, if you're using metals in your magic, or if you're wearing and carrying metal, then you're going to be able to then tap it into elemental and metal magic, just like the Allomancers do in the Mistborn series. Maybe not doing such wondrous feats as they do, because I read these books quite a while ago, so they're not fresh on my mind, hence why I needed some notes. So with the Allomancy, they have special abilities, I believe. One of the abilities was that they were able to have increased speed. But I think in the notes it was saying that... All right, so I'll just read you what the notes say. It'll be easier. So the allomantic metals are known with... There's 8 basic allomantic metals known as gold, which allows a user to see into their possible past, and atium, which allows people to see a few seconds into their future, being referred to as a higher metals. The 8 basic metals are iron, steel, tin, pewter, zinc, brass, copper, and bronze. By the end of the novel, aluminium is introduced as another allomantic metal. So I just found that was really interesting. When I first had the Mistborn books recommended to me, I'd already read a lot of the other books that I'm going to tell you about at this point. That was one of the latest editions, even though it was quite a while ago when I read it. But that was introduced to me, and I thought, oh, I really can't be bothered reading another series. But I did it anyway, and I was thankful for it because I really did enjoy it once I gave it a chance. So the allomancy is split into... So the Mistborn metal magic that they do is split into the 3 different magical abilities. So the first one was allomancy. The second one is feruchemy. This is a metallic art used by Sazed and other terrace keepers. It uses the same metals as allomancy to store physical and mental attributes for later use. You can only draw from your metal mines as much as you put in previously. While you are storing an attribute for later use, you have less of that attribute at that current time. For example, if you're storing speed, like I was talking about, then you would then be moving slowly, because that ability that is kind of waning out of yourself, and it's been stored and saved for later. So if you were storing speed, for instance, then you would be moving very slowly. But then the good thing about that ability is that if you're in a battle, for instance, then you can tap into that speed which you've stored away, and then you'd be whizzing around the place kicking ass. So that's a good thing about that. And then the third one is hemorrhage. So this is the final of the 3 metallic arts. So it's a lot rarer than the other one, so not a lot is known about that, as it's the bad guys which use this form of the metal magic. So the bad guys, they're known as the Inquisitors. So it's interesting that they chose to call them that, because it's kind of like the Inquisition and the witch hunters, that sort of thing. But they're the bad guys in the book. And basically, the book, there is a ruler who's kind of who is a tyrant, and the ruler is a tyrant, and then there is the rebellion group. They're trying to overthrow the tyrant. So I forgot what he's called now, but he's called Lord Ruler. It says it right there. But yeah, so the Lord Ruler, he kind of has his. So if you think of like in the Lord of the Rings, they have ring wraiths. In Mistborn, they have the Inquisitors. So the Inquisitors are similar to the ring wraiths, really, because they go and do the bidding of the Lord Ruler and the Supreme Dark Lord. Even though they don't call him the Supreme Dark Lord, I don't believe. But yeah, it's kind of just aligns with Dark Lord from Lord of the Rings, Sauron. Okay, so that is point number 1. So point number 2 is crystals. So I did actually mention a little bit about that. So if you've seen some of my other videos, and you'll know that I love crystals. But in the Secret Circle, so where have I got that book? So here I have book 1. So this is the Secret. So the Mistborn, I'm not sure if I told you. So that one was by Brandon Sanderson, and the Secret Circle is by L.J. Smith. So what I found interesting about this, what I found interesting about it was the use of magical crystals. So in the Secret Circle, they use these crystals. Oh, I'm not sure where I have mine, but there's these cute little clear quartz crystals. I'm not sure if I've got some crystals over here, but it's not exactly the same, but I'll pick this up anyway. But yeah, so magic crystals. Oh gosh, that is dusty. So in the Secret Circle, they have magical crystals, and the important thing about the crystals is they amplify the witch's abilities, and basically they can do lots more magic with these powerful crystals. So there is a number of these crystals hidden around the place. So when one of the witches finds them, they have an advantage over the other witches who don't have a crystal. So the witches in the Secret Circle, they can all practice magic, but if you possess one of the magical crystals, then your magic is amped up and far superior to the other witches. But the downside to relying on the crystal magic is that the crystal's magic becomes depleted. So the moral of the story here is, well, there's kind of 2 morals there. One, crystal's good, and you can store magic in the crystals. Crystals are generators, they're record keepers, so you can put a number of frequencies and types of magic inside a crystal. So the other thing about that is, I forgot what the other thing was. Gosh, my memory is not very good. So storing the crystals in there. So while I just have a think about what I was mentioning before my mind went off topic or went off on a tangent, I'm going to read you what the notes I wrote. So it says, in the secret circle, both Charles Meade and Dawn Chamberlain shared a crystal. So basically, what if I'm not sure if any of you have read the Secret Circle or watched any of the TV series, because that there was a TV series from that as well, which was actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be terrible, but I started watching it just because I like to watch anything that's to do with witches and magic. But I actually did enjoy it. Okay, but we're talking about the book now. So the important thing to remember, so with this amplified power which comes from the crystals, that the other witches become envious of it. So all of the witches are out searching for the crystals, and if you know someone else has a crystal, then you try to get your hands on it and steal it from them. And that is basically what happens a lot if you, in the secret circle. They just a witch will come across the crystal and they'll think they're the bee's knees, they think they're God's gift to the world, and then another witch will be like, right, I'm onto you, you've got a crystal, and they pretty much just waltz in and steal their crystal, and that's the end of that. And then it just keeps on going like that, so the crystal gets passed from hand to hand to hand just because everyone's envious of it, and by the end of it the crystal just becomes depleted of energy and it has no more magic, so it doesn't amplify the magic anymore because it's all been used up. So they even attempt to raise somebody back to life from the dead with the crystal. That's how powerful they are. So I can't remember if they actually succeed in doing so, but one of the witches actually does attempt to raise somebody from the dead with the power of a crystal. So that is a bit crazy but cool at the same time. Okay. So it says Charles. So once it says Charles hits Jane on the back of the head and steals the crystal after he used it to alter Jane's memory of the event. So basically, this guy he gets onto Jane, who has one of the crystals. He then hits her on the head, steals her crystal, and then uses the crystal to wipe her memory so that she doesn't remember any of it. And I don't think she even remembers anything about the crystals. So that is quite sneaky and quite evil. So that is the secret circle. So what we can take from it, the real magic in this, is that we can all use crystal magic to our advantage, because crystals, they are stores of any type of energy, especially benevolent energies. So crystals, they also do tend to absorb darker energies. So if you leave a crystal in a room, it will absorb the dark energies and the negative vibes for you. So then you just have to cleanse the crystal. So, but the main important thing the important lesson from number 2, what we got from the secret circle, is that crystals can be used effectively in magic, and you can store your spells in the crystal. You can store your desires and intentions, affirmations, everything. Store it in the crystals because they're freaking awesome. Okay, so that's number 2. Then number 3, Dragon Search. So this is a kid's book which I read quite some time ago, but it still is one of my favorites. I remember when I read it, I was quite fond of this book. So it's by Patricia C. Reed. So Dragon Search, it is the second book 2 of the series. I believe the first one was Dragon Quest, I believe. I'll double check to see if it does tell. Oh no, sorry. The first one is Dragon's Bane by the same author. So what I liked about this is I found, actually, before I get into that, I'm going to read you what notes I've wrote down. So I just got a bit of information from Goodreads just to give you about what it's about, because obviously I just didn't want to read the whole blurb to you. So Dragon Search, so it's about a princess named Cimarine. The princess, she refuses to be proper, so she's not your typical Disney princess. She doesn't want to learn etiquette. Then again, she kind of is like a Disney princess, because the majority of them don't want to be the typical princess either. So she doesn't want to be just your stereotypical princess. She'd rather be learning magic than learning etiquette and all of that rubbish, and how to please a man. All of that silliness. So it says, Cimarine, the princess, refuses to be proper, and she is back. But where is Kazul, the dragon? That's what Cimarine is determined to find out. So in the first book, I believe Cimarine, the princess, she comes across this magical dragon, and I believe she develops a friendship with the dragon. But in this second book, the dragon has gone missing. So then the princess and some of the other friends then have to search to find what's happened with the dragon. And I'll give you a little spoiler. There is a wizard who has taken the dragon hostage, pretty much. But what we can take from that, the lesson that I learned from that, is that in this simple child's book, they're using like a herbal charm. So, and there's cool spells. So I just opened it directly to that page by that was by accident. But it says, wind for clarity, stone for endurance, stream for change, fire for truth, be what you are. So it says, Morwen spread the 5 dragon scales out in a line. She set the purple scale at one end and the bright green one at the other. Then she held the bowl over the centre of the line, took a deep breath, and said those magic words. But the spell that I really liked the most in this, which really did have quite an impact on me, was the Featherfew. There's a spell to repel dangerous fire. So the princess Cimarine, she uses this spell, and the spell uses Featherfew. So basically, she gathers the herb Featherfew, and she uses that herb in a rhyming litany or ditty. So I'm not sure if I can find it so quickly, but she uses the spell to then repel any harm, so she becomes impervious to harm by fire, basically, which is useful if there is dragons about, because Kazul, the dragon, is her friend, but I don't believe that Kazul is the only dragon. And of course, dragons aren't too fond of any humans or magical practitioners, just because they're a different species, and humans can be pretty annoying, to be fair. And harmful to other species. But yeah, so that's annoying. I cannot see that spell. wait a minute, that was, no, that's the same spell again. So yeah, that's silly. So if I do come across the spell, I will put the spell in the comments. But the important thing about the spell was, how long are we doing? The main important thing about the spell is that it is a rhyming spell which uses herbs. So why I chose that as one of my top 10 things, which are top 10 lessons which I gained from the fiction books, is that using rhyming spells and using magical herbs and featherfew. After I read that book, I wanted some featherfew so badly. I had no clue where to find it. I actually do have some featherfew now, which is quite funny. I have a lot of herbs. Okay. So also, another point that I wrote, that dragons are real. I love working with dragon energies. That is another important thing that we can get from this. Tapping into dragon energy is so fulfilling, but always remember to be respectful of the dragon energies. Don't try to control a dragon. Don't be rude and disrespectful. Always come from a place of humble always come from a humble place, basically, and always be respectful to dragons, because they're a lot bigger than us and their energy is immense. So don't pee them off. Okay. Okay, so number 4 on my list is wormwood. So what is interesting about this one? So this one, there is a cool quote which I've probably read to you before in one of the other book, in one of my other videos, because I like the quote a lot. So the quote is, don't go throwing magic at things which can be fixed with your own 2 hands. Magic is like a rare paint. Use it sparingly. So that is a quote from this book that I really liked. So the lesson there is, basically, it's pretty self-explanatory, that one. Don't just go casting spells for every little thing, because when magic is used in that way, it cheapens it. And basically, if you're not working the magic properly in the first place, you're going to become very depleted, because if you're not tapping it into the infinite energies from spirit and deity and etc., then you will become very depleted. But the main thing to remember is that with magic, it should be savored, it should be treasured, and don't just throw it away. Don't cheapen it by just casting magical spells for every single little thing you come across. So for every time somebody annoys you, oh, I'm putting a hex on you, or every time you want it to be a sunny day outside, casting a good weather spell. So try to be, like I said, be humble and just be respectful for the art form, which is witchcraft and magic. Just be respectful of it, because it is a precious thing and it shouldn't be wasted. Okay. But the other funny thing which I find about Wormwood, and a lot of the other books, such as the Tolkien books, Lord of the Rings as well, they are written by authors who are extremely Christian, and they have strong Christian beliefs. Apparently, this one, G.P. Taylor, apparently he is from North Yorkshire, so that is not far from where I am. So yeah, it's interesting that, but I always find it funny how like a lot of these fantasy authors such as G.P. Taylor, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis are all like extremely Christian, but that is, but I guess it's that it does date the books as well, because if you look at the time, if you look at authors now, not not every single one of them is going to have a religion, and most of them wouldn't be Christianity either. There's when you look at religion nowadays, it's a lot more varied. Okay, so I wrote here Wormwood. So that's the book by J.P. Taylor. This is a fantasy sequel to J.P. Taylor's Shadowmancer. It follows the adventures of Dr. Sabian Blake and his servant girl, Agatha Lamian. So Taylor professed that the work. So it says that Taylor is criticised for attacking other religions. Taylor professed that the work was against the Kabbalah, which he saw as a practice that led to Satan, apparently, which is quite funny. Okay, so where are we going next? So Lord of the Rings. So yeah, these two do tie into each other because they do have a similar theme. So with Lord of the Rings, here I've got the Return of the King. I picked that one out accidentally. I was supposed to bring the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, but never mind. So we have the Return of the King here. But if you are interested in Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien or J.R.R. Tolkien, then do check out The Fellowship of the Ring or The Hobbit, as they are the books which come first. The Hobbit is first. Okay. But that's what is important about. So the lessons which I gained from The Lord of the Rings was, again, it ties in with the Wormwood. When you read Lord of the Rings, you don't see Gandalf using a lot of magic. He uses it very sparingly, and he really picks his moments. And when you watch the movie as well, it is really, really interesting, because you see that rather than just reading it. What is interesting is you see Gandalf. He's just, if you watch the movie, he just looks like an old man, and then for a lot of it, and he's just trudging about the place, and then it just comes to a part in the movie when he has to fight the Balrog, which is a ancient fire demon. So Gandalf has a face off with the Balrog, and it is epic. You shall not pass. So, but what I'm trying to get at is, you see, Gandalf reserves his magic for big tasks rather than just flittering his magic away on any little old thing. He reserves his energy because he's smart in that way. So that is a lesson that we can gain from Wormwood and Lord of the Rings. And it's kind of interesting that the Christian authors would persuade you to use less magic as well. I think that is kind of funny there, but anyhow. So that is Lord of the Rings. So let me see what if I wrote any other points. No, so yeah, So it's all about the themes and moral of the Lord of the Rings is that power corrupts. So when you look at the one ring to rule them all, the the ring can corrupt anyone. So even Gandalf won't hold the ring because he knows that if he does come into close contact with the ring, that he may be very well become another Dark Lord and take over the world and lose all self control. So the the message and moral in that story is that power does corrupt. If you see anyone who becomes extremely powerful and influential, when you have that kind of power, it it is kind of difficult to not misuse it, or not difficult to not misuse it, but it's more it's more it's more it, I can't think of the right word. You It is tempting. That is the word that I wanted. It's tempting not to use it not to use your power for something which may get you what you want, but may harm someone else in the process. So power does corrupt it in that way. So another lesson which we learn from the Lord of the Rings, it's just about having restraint with your magic and not just throwing the magic away. So if you look at Gandalf, he uses his magic only when it's truly needed. He picks his battles wisely and he always wins his battles. Okay. So what book have we got next? So number 6. So number 6 is the Earthsea Quartet. So this book right here is actually four books all crammed into one. So there's a lot of cool books here. So I really do like this one. So it follows a wizard named Ged. So if you like anime, you may have come across like Studio Ghibli, or I believe there's like an anime version of it on Netflix. So that's called The Tales of Earthsea. So the Tales of Earthsea, I believe they've condensed it down. They've condensed the 4 books down into one story, one narrative. But the Earthsea Quartet is very interesting and detailed. So let's have a look. So let's see. So the first book is A Wizard of Earthsea. The second book is The Tombs of Atuan. So the Wizard of Earthsea, I really loved that one, and it reads really easy and it's really engrossing. So like I really got into that one, and when you get to the second book, it's a noticeable difference between the first and second book, because you switch the place where you're based. So in the Wizard of Earthsea, it's kind of similar to Harry Potter in a way. This guy, he goes to a magical school for wizards, so he can learn his majory and his practice magic and learn the true names of things, which was interesting as well. So that is another lesson which is in there. So everything has a true name. So we can always, names are very important. So when you know the name of something, you're able to harness that power or have power over that thing. So basically, in the wizardly school, the wizard Ged, he learns names of all of the trees, all of the plants, and by learning the names, he's able to then work magic with them. Okay. And what else is interesting about this? Another lesson that is in there, it's about coming to terms with the shadow self as well, and finding the balance between the light and the dark. Because in I believe it's in the last book, The Farthest Shore, he has to he goes he goes very far out into sea, and he eventually comes like to the edge of the world pretty much, or into the underworld or something along those lines. But he travels for so far, and he eventually comes to a place where the shadows rule supreme, and he meets his own shadow pretty much, I believe. If I'm remembering that correctly, I've not read it in some time now, but I believe he meets his own shadow, and that is the message that we get from that. So all of this time, he's been scared of the dark. He's been scared of the evil sorcerers winning the battle, basically, and he's basically just been overlooking the shadow. So when he finally comes to terms with his shadow self, with all of the bad things he's done, with everything that he's not wanting to look at, when he actually does harness that and heal that, he then is able to find it a balance, and that is a good lesson for us all. So that is exactly what we can take from that. So by doing the shadow work, we what I come across a lot when I look at shadow work and the people who teach about shadow work, they one of the things that I have heard from them is that shadow work is like unburdening yourself. So you're letting go of all of the baggage which has been holding you back for so long. So a lot of people out there is like, oh, I'm manifesting this, that, and the other, and I'm focusing on manifesting and love and light only, and I'm only focusing on positive things. And when you do that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot if you're only going to focus on the manifesting and only focusing on positive things and not looking at the painful things and healing them and letting them go. So when you do integrate the shadow and heal and unburden yourself of the things that you don't want to look at and you don't want to deal with, and the pain and the grief and the traumas, when you do face those, then that is when you're able to then become light light as air, and that's when you're in the prime position to do any sort of manifestation. That is when you become your balanced and higher self, pretty much. Okay, so that is number 6. So I'll just read a little bit about that. So the Wizard of Earthsea and the Earthsea Quartet, the books first published in the late 1960s, are written in a simple, free-flowing style. The book's narrative keeps you intrigued, although I must admit that I found the opening chapters of the Tombs of Achewan, so that's the second book, rather hard going. This was due mainly to the in-depth descriptions of the catacombs and the undertombs. So there is a strong Taoist element running through the book, especially in regard to the balance of magic. You might even say that Newton's second law, to every action there is an equal but opposite reaction, would also apply here. So that is from Goodreads. So that's what someone added on there about that. So yeah, it's the most overlying theme in the Wizard of Earthsea in the Tales, the Earthsea Quartet. I can't talk properly. Earthsea Quartet. The overlying message there is about finding the equilibrium and the balance, and that the outer matches the inner. So finding the balance within, you also find the balance on the outside as well. Okay, so there's a bit more about the Tales of Earthsea here in the notes. So it says, Ged, the young boy who becomes a mage, is essential to all four sagas, and his choices dictate the story's direction. One such key moment occurs early in his training, shortly after he has been taken under the wing of Ogian, who is his mentor and friend. Ged has become frustrated with his perceived lack of progress, and Ogian offers him these following words of wisdom. You did not come to me, but I to you. You are very, very young to make this choice, but I cannot make it for you. If you wish, I will send you to Roke Island, which is pretty much Hogwarts, where all high arts are taught. Any craft you undertake to learn, you will learn, for your power is great, greater even than your pride, I hope. I would keep you here with me, for what I have is what you lack, but I will not keep you against your will. Now choose between Ray Alibi and Roke. And obviously, Ged the wizard chooses Roke, which is he chooses to go to Hogwarts and learn all of the magical arts there, rather than being patient with his mentor and teacher to learn magic with him at the mentor's own pace. But yeah, he was too impatient for that. So the next book that I want to talk about is The Moon of Gomrath. So The Moon of Gomrath is a Alan Garner book. So what is interesting about this book, The Moon of Gomrath, so I'll read what it says here. When the Moon of Gomrath, the one night of the year when old magic is at its most powerful, has descended, and two friends unknowingly awaken the wild hunt, Colin, Susan, and the wizard Cadilin must save the world from a horrible battle before it is too late. So, in this book, what I really liked was the wizard in it. He uses an elemental spell to overcome evil. So this is a spell that I have used myself on occasion, because even though it's in a children's book, it is basically just harnessing the power of the element. So basically it is power of the wind have I over thee, power of wrath have I over thee, power of fire have I over thee, power of thunder have I over thee, power of lightning have I over thee. So it sounds kind of similar to the witch's armor. So the witch's armor is a very cool protection spell. The author is unknown for that one, but it sounds very similar to this, to be fair. But it's a lot longer than this. It goes on for quite some time. But basically, the witch's armor is just fortifying yourself with the different magics, and this is similar to this spell in this book. So he calls upon the wind, he calls upon the rain, the thunder, the fire, the lightning. So all of these, he calls upon the power of storms, power of the moon, power of the sun, the stars. So it's calling upon all of these elemental and magical aspects, and he gathers them to himself to then back him up. So that is the important thing to remember when you're facing against something that is evil. So a lower entity, a lower vibrational being, it may want you to believe that you're vulnerable and alone. But when you're tapping into spirit, you tap into nature, you're not alone, you are protected, you're fully backed. So this being or entity may put on a front, so it may seem like a big and scary thing, but when you call upon nature, the infinite power of nature, and you're not disconnected from nature, so you become bigger and more powerful than that thing. So it even goes on to say in the spell, power of the heavens and of the world have I over thee. Okay, so it's really, really cool. So I really liked that spell. So that is one of the lessons that we have learned from that book, or we can learn rather. So another thing which I liked about that was he also mentions, so Alan Garner, they also mention ley lines. So they I believe they travel to the ley lines. They go on Alderley Edge, which is a place in England. Alderley Edge, where the old, I believe they call it the Old Straight Track. So that is like a folk name for the ley lines. So that is another message which we can get from the children's book, The Moon of Gomrath. Pay attention to the ley lines. Tap into the ley lines. Tap into the nature energy, because it is infinite energy and you can do wondrous things with it. Okay. So next I have the gift and the riddle. So this is a series by Alison Croggan. So I really liked these ones. So what I really liked about this, basically this is based about a girl who's called Mayrad. So Mayrad, she was a slave, but she was a slave at first. So in the first book, you find her as she's a slave and she escapes slavery, but then she comes into her own as she discovers that she has these very powerful magical abilities. So then she then has to learn how to use those, but she also then makes some powerful enemies along the way, and some of the enemies are elementals. So she comes across two elementals, which I remember clearly. So one of the elementals is not very friendly, but one of the elementals is friendly. So there is Lady Ardeen. So she's kind of like a Lady Galadriel sort of character. So there's that elemental. So and then there is the other one who is Arkan. So he is the winter elemental. So he's like really frosty and cruel and cold. But basically, she really pees Arkan off, and he doesn't like her. So he pretty much wants to hunt her down and kill her. But obviously, she has very strong abilities, and she manages to not get her ass, oh excuse my French, not get a butt kicked by the elemental. But the thing that I found most interesting about what we can learn from this book, I really loved the descriptions for the elementals, like Alison Croggan's descriptions about the elementals. They were very riveting and very, very real. So I really connected with her descriptions of the elementals. I wonder if I can find any quickly. I should have got some ready. But there is the two elementals. So yeah, all right. So it says, all right. So, are you dying, my daughter? Ardina said. I think you have put all your life into your music, because basically Mayrad, who is the main character, she's a bard, so her magic does come through the music. All right. So it says here about the elementals. So let me read that bit. So it says, Ardina appeared neither as a wild Elidu of the wood, so she's not a wild nymph of the woods, shimmering naked in a bower of branches, nor as the agelessly beautiful Queen of Rashida. Mayrad saw her as the songs described her, as Cadvan had sung of her once long ago, the enchanting daughter of the moon, a being spun of sheer moonbeams, beautiful and evanescent. Mayrad was past astonishment. She thought she must be dreaming or suffering a fantastic vision, as people were said to do sometimes in the extremity before death, and she gazed at Ardina as if it were completely natural that she should be there. The Elidu was suspended slightly above the ground, unmoving save for her hair, which stirred in a wind that Mayrad could not feel. She seemed to be waiting for Mayrad to speak, but as you can see, that's a really beautiful description of the elemental being, and that is what I really liked about these books by Alison Croggan. So hats off to Alison Croggan for that, because I really liked her description of the elementals, and of course I loved the stories as well. But that is one of the favorite things about the book. And so what else we can take from that is elemental magic is very interesting. So you can tap into elemental magic. So tapping into the lords of the watchtowers, the elemental rulers. So we have Gob in the north. Gob is the ruler of earth, and then there is Nixa in the west. There is Djinn in the south, and I'm forgetting Paralda in the east as well. So they're the elemental rulers. So you could begin to build a relationship with the elemental rulers, but again, remember to be respectful when you're working with other entities, and it's always have protection as well, because because elementals and different energies, they can be unpredictable sometimes, and when you're doing any form of energy work, other beings can become attracted to that. So just always have good protection, not because the elementals seek to harm you, but just because any form of magical working or spiritual working, you're always going to gain attention when you're practicing magic or psychic abilities. You become like a beacon, a light, and people, they can see you from the other side, so of the veil. So whether they're in a good place or not a good place, both anyone on the other side can see how bright your light is. So that is why it's always good to have protection. Okay. Okay, so I'll read you what it says about the books of Pellinor. That's what they're called. So the first book is the gift. The second book, which I have here, is the riddle. So it says, the books of Pellinor, a great series of fantasy novels that will delight fans of Garth Nix, and that is very true because I am a fan of Garth Nix. Perfect for readers of Lord of the Rings, Ursula Le Guin, and Trudy Cadvan, or Canavan it says there, but I think they mean Trudy Cadvan. Alison Croggan's best-selling high fantasy novel is the first part of Mayrad's compelling saga as she begins to learn how to use her gift to battle the dark forces that wish to destroy her. Mayrad is a slave in a desperate and unforgiving settlement, taken there as a child when her family is destroyed in war. She is unaware that she possesses a powerful gift, a gift that marks her as a member of the school of Pellinor. It is only when she is discovered by Cadvan, one of the great bards, that her true heritage and extraordinary destiny unfold. Now she and her teacher Cadvan must survive a punishing and uncertain journey through a time and place where the dark forces battle with stem from the deepest recesses of the otherworldly terror. So yeah, basically the dark forces want to stop her and don't want her becoming a force of good and light. But saying that, this is just to do with fantasy fiction, so please don't get me wrong when I'm talking about dark forces. I don't mean that all dark forces are evil, because that is simply not the case. There are dark goddesses such as Hecate, who is my patron goddess. There's Sekhmet, who's another dark goddess. There's plenty of dark deities. There's Anubis, who's a dark deity as well. So dark does not mean evil, but just always have protection anyway. Okay. So number 9 on my list. So we're nearly there. So I had 10 main stories on my list. So number 9 is Sabriel. So I really freaking love this series. So this one's by Garth Nix. So this is what is the series called again? I've forgotten what the name of the series is. I'm there saying how much I love it, and I can't remember the name of the series. But it's Garth Nix. It's the Abortion series, I believe it's called. I believe it is anyway. So basically, Sabriel, she is a necromancer, which sounds quite scary if you think of it, but it's not. She's not a scary figure at all. So I'll tell you a basic bit about Sabriel. So Sabriel, she has grown up away from magic with all of the humans, but she finds out that she's not like everybody else, and her dad is a necromancer as well, but her dad is distant and he sends her off to a boarding school where she's just surrounded by normal people. And she has this gift because her dad is a necromancer. It runs in the family. So one time she sees a rabbit which is being run over or something like that. And so she sees a dead rabbit, and she can really feel it because she has the necromancer blood within her. She really strongly can sense death. So she has super senses, so she can sense if there's a dead being around. So if there's a spirit, if there's been a death nearby, anything like that, she can sense that. So it does sound a bit morbid, but believe me, it is nothing of the sort. It is really freaking amazing. I really love that one. So that is one of my favorite series. That they're also good. I'm trying to remember how many there is now. I must have about 5 or 6 of them. So it's still going, this series. It's really good. So let me see when this one came out. I think it's like 2000 or something. So it says 2002. It's, oh wait a minute. It says first published in 1995 in Australia. But I didn't read it that early. I read it in probably around 2003 or 4. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised when I came across that one. So what we can learn from Sabriel, what lessons can we learn from that? So what is interesting, you see that on the front of the book, they call that a charter mark. So it's similar to like a sigil or a rune. So when in this universe, there's lots of people who practice magic. So there's not just necromancers, there's charter mages as well. So they call it charter mages, and they all have charter. They use the charter marks to work magic, and they also have a charter mark engraved on their own head. So that just helps to connect them with the charter, which is pretty much like the Force in Star Wars, or Spirit as we like to call it, or the universe. It just tunes them into the universe, these charter marks, so they're able to use magic in that way. And what is actually interesting, I know I'm going off on a tangent a bit, but if Owl House does something pretty much the same as well. Owl House, that's a series on Disney. But they use magical marks in the same way, so that's charter marks. But what is interesting behind this, behind the charter marks, that is actually based on fairy. So if you look at a lot of the new age or spiritual teachers, you'll hear a lot about people speaking light language. So as well as light language, we have light codes. So people sometimes make different shapes with the hands. I don't really do that much, but you can envision light codes. And basically, when the easiest way to think of a light code is when you do a meditation, if you meet a totem animal, a protector guide, anything like that, or a deity in a meditation, or an ancestor, anything, if you meet any spiritual being in their meditation and they give you a gift, so if it's a flower, if it's a crystal, if it's any item at all, if you're given a gift by a spiritual being in a dream or meditation, then you're being given a light code. So that is the interesting thing there. So working with these symbols. So the important thing to know about this, so why it's based on reality and real magic, is because basically they say that in these books that everything is made up of the charter and the charter marks, just as in our reality everything is made up of light codes. So that is what I really loved, and I found that quite surprising that it really resonates, because it's really true. So another thing that I really liked about this, in these books, they also use cardinal magic as well. So cardinal magic is like in Wicca or witchcraft, that we call the 4 quarters, so east, south, west, and north, like I was mentioning with the elemental rulers as well. So calling the quarters. So in Sabriel, they do something which they call casting a diamond of protection. So basically, they use their sword to draw a diamond in the ground around them, and then they stand in that diamond, and that they use the charter and their magic to create a diamond shield around them so nothing can harm them whilst they're in that diamond of protection. So is that it resonates with the use of calling the quarters and casting cardinal magic, such as calling upon the rulers of the quarters, calling the elements of the quarters. You can call any different sort of being for the quarters. So you may call upon the angels of the quarters. So there is Uriel in the north, there is Raphael in the east, there is Michael in the south, there is Gabriel in the west. So there's angels of each quarter as well. So cardinal magic is a very real thing. So the fact that they use cardinal magic in the series as well, I found that very interesting, especially that they're using it for protection as well. So it's just the same as like calling the rulers of the quarters, whether they're angels or elementals, you can call upon them in your own practice for protection as well. Anyone can call upon the angels or the elementals, but obviously always do it in a respectful way. Don't be rude. Okay. So the last thing about these books, about this series that I love so much, is the magic she uses. The necromancers, they use magic bells. So there are bad necromancers in the book as well, but Sabriel and her father, they are good necromancers. So they use the charter for their magic, and the evil sorcerers, they use something like, which they call free magic, which is kind of ironic because I was talking about Owl House. They've got this thing where they in Owl House they're persecuted for using something which is called wild magic. So it's kind of similar there, but I may talk about Owl House in another video because I quite like that a lot as well. But for the purpose of this, the magical bells. So as I have a magical bell here, so it's all to do with using the tone. So everything is frequency. So if you're sending out thoughts, if you're sending out words, if you're singing, holding a tone, if you're ringing a bell, everything is a frequency. So the important thing in the books, they have a bandolier of bells. So a bandolier, it's like a belt which they can fasten. I believe it's the 7 bells. Is it 7 or 9 different bells? I can't remember the exact number now. But the necromancers, they all have these bells which they use to control the dead. So basically they use the bells to put the dead to rest or to wake them up, or there is different bells do different things. So one bell will give the dead creature movement, another bell will allow it to speak, another bell will cause it to walk beyond the border back into death where it belongs. So the different bells have different actions. So another bell will bind it to your will. So I found that the magic about using the magic of bells, I found that extremely creative as well, and it really is relevant because bells are used for magic all around the world. So if you look at other cultures, they have bells hanging by the windows, by the doorways. It's to ward off evil. for banishing evil, and that's just in the same way. So bells are used for binding and for calling, for summoning. So you'd use a bell to either summon or to banish as well. Much in the same way that they use the bells in Sabriel. So you can, if you have a magical bell, you can use it for many different things. So traditionally, in witchcraft and in Wicca, we use the bell to signal that the ritual is about to begin, or that the ritual is ended. So that is what we would use it for. Also, it has such a nice tone as well, so you could also use that in meditation as well. Okay, so that is number 9. Number 10 of the book. So I believe I've been going on for quite some time now. So this is number 10. So a discovery of witches. So this one as well. I really love all of these books, but a discovery of witches, that was really wow. So this is one of the most recent ones, as you can tell, because a lot of the other books were quite old. So there's Earthsea Quartet, that was first published in the 60s, and then Sabriel, as I said, that was like 2000s, early 2000s. But Discovery of Witches, let's see when this was published, but I believe it's a lot later than those. Oh, so 2011, this one. So 2011. So yeah, it's a really good book. A Discovery of Witches. There's also a TV series that they've made out of it on Sky, which is surprisingly good, because sometimes when they make a TV series out of a book, it can be quite disappointing if you're one of the people who actually read the book, because they have a little too much artistic freedom. But why I chose A Discovery of Witches for one of my 10. So what lessons, so I'll, before I tell you the lessons which you can get from A Discovery of Witches, I want to tell you a little bit about it. So in A Discovery of Witches, that it focuses on different animals, rather, different magical supernatural creatures. So there is obviously witches, there is something that they call daemons. So the daemons, they're kind of like geniuses, and they're very artistic. So so if you like think of like really genius artists, like one of them is one of the funny things, or one of the cool elements of it as well, is that I believe the author, she studied history as well. So yeah, it says she's a professor of history at the University of Southern California. So she knows a shizzle about history as well. So when it comes to daemons, they have a special ability where they're able to really use their mind in ways that regular people cannot do. So I believe they've got optimum thinking, and they're able to like write masterpieces, make great pieces of works of art. But the downside to their ability is that they often end up going mad as well. So it does sound just like any particular artist as well, because that does happen to artists sometimes. Like if you think of like someone like Van Gogh, like they say he cut off his own ear. But the important thing about A Discovery of Witches is that it's centered around the main character, I'm trying to remember what she's called now. How can I not remember the name of the character? So there's Matthew Claremont, who's a vampire, and he kind of falls in love with the witch. So it's kind of like Romeo and Juliet in a way. It's kind of got that sort of theme, like a forbidden love. Diana, how can I forget that? That's the name of the goddess. So the main character is Diana. They actually do make reference to like the goddess of the hunt, the deity Diana as well. And I do like that they do pay homage to Diana within the book. But the important thing about this and the lesson that we can learn from it, the Diana, she is not just like the run-of-the-mill witch. So as with most of these books, there's always a heroine or a hero who is more powerful than your regular magical practitioner. So then the story is always rooted around them. So she is a powerful witch, but the thing about her, she's a powerful witch, but she actually doesn't really like witchcraft, to be fair. She doesn't use it. So she's got this very powerful natural gift, but she spent most of her life avoiding actually using magic. So she never really uses it, which and that soon changes because Matthew Claremont comes into her life because something actually changes. So a lot of crazy stuff starts happening. Diana's parents were murdered, and she then begins to get in a bit of trouble herself. So she has to learn to use her magic and defend herself. But she later discovers that she's not just a run-of-the-mill witch, that because the run-of-the-mill witches, they can just cast spells, but witches like Diana, she actually can create her own spells, which many others cannot do. So that is the interesting thing about that, is the message in there is about creating your own magic. The magic that we create ourselves is always going to be the strongest for you. So you're always going to get the best results with magic which you create yourself. So let's see, what other messages do I have in here? Yes, I believe that is mainly it then. But what I really liked, what else I liked about this, there's loads of cool stuff. So I forgot, yeah, there's vampires as well. So there's witches, demons, and vampires. So it's the supernatural world is split up between those witches, demons, and vampires. But demons, they're not demons. They're, like I was saying, the artistic geniuses. Okay. But the book is very good. And that's what I'll just say for now. Like it was very addictive with me, even though it's quite a chunky book, as you can see. I was really addicted with it, and I had to read it the full thing as soon as possible. Okay, so I have a few other books on my list. So they're the top 10. So I'll just quickly tell you 5 other books that I suggest you check out if you like books, and books which may be interesting. So let me see, I'll just look which books I actually have here in front of me. So there's Dime Store Magic by Kelly Armstrong. So this comes from her Otherworld series. There is Circe by Madeline Miller. And there is The Summoner by Gail Z. Martin. So again, The Summoner, Gail Z. Martin. Again, that features more necromancers. And then there's The Merlin Conspiracy by Diana Wynne Jones. That is a really cool one. So yeah, that is. And then over here, there's another really kids book called The Book of Shadows. So I'm going to leave that there. So thank you for tuning in. Please do check out some of the other videos. So I have a lot of videos about protection. I have videos about Book of Shadows as well. So if you're interested in creating your own spells or gathering spells in a Book of Shadows, then do check out those videos. Thank you for tuning in, and I will bid you all farewell till next time. Do come and check out my live stream next week. Most likely at the same time, Friday evening. We're going to have a look at my Charmed book collection. Okay.